Good evening and welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, she was only 17 and working to raise enough money to further her education when Brigitte Serre was cut down in her prime.
It was just like, this can't be real. It has to be a nightmare. It just couldn't get into my mind that someone could actually do that to somebody that I love.
I had to be sat in an ambulance because I was afraid that I was going to have a heart attack.
We went to meet with the owner of the gas station who gave us certain leads about certain employees that had recently been fired.
And now her killer is seeking freedoms to better his life, while her family cries, where is the justice?
I don't trust the system anymore. I've lost all the trust that I had. It's like, we don't count.
He's playing nice music and everybody's dancing on it. But I don't dance in this music. I see the truth in him from the beginning.
Here now is Dan Spector with The Deadly Night Shift.
It's late January 2006 in the east end of Montreal on a cold, dark night. At this gas station at the busy intersection of La Cordaire and Grande Prairie, 17-year-old Brigitte Serre is working the overnight shift alone. She's been out of school for a little while now. The gas station is the latest in a series of odd jobs. She usually works the day shift, but on this night, she generously agreed to fill in for a colleague on the graveyard shift.
I remember the night before, like it was yesterday. We spent the night, play card, watch a movie. She was working, I think, at 11 at midnight. And right before she was getting ready to go to work, I was like, no, stay. I didn't know why. I didn't want her to go, but I didn't want her to go. And she went.
Brigitte was living with her sister Amélie at the time, and they were together at the apartment they shared until the moment she left for work.
She took the shift of somebody. She replaced him that night, and she was like, I cannot call sick or not go because I replaced somebody.
I remember it was a snowy morning, the 25th of January. Getting in that morning, our detective lieutenant at the time, Michel Tremblay, had called us. I don't even think we were at work yet. I remember the first person that had called 911 was a client that had come to purchase gas that morning, and the thing that had struck him was the cash drawer was on the floor.
Police were called to the scene by a customer who found it strange no one answered the door.
When they arrived after getting the call from a citizen, they wanted to get inside. They were not able to. The door was locked. But they could see there was chaos inside the service station. So what they did is they tried to force the door open. I remember the sergeant who was on the scene. He was a policeman who was pretty big, pretty strong, and he smashed the door to get inside and broke the window. But in doing that, he cut himself. He started bleeding.
Amélie Serre was an employee at the very same Shell station and was scheduled to take over from Brigitte the following morning to work the day shift.
My boyfriend was dropping me, and I came earlier because I knew it was my sister. I think it was like 5:30 or 6, and I start at 8 usually. And I say, oh, it's my sister, I'm gonna go early, do some coffee stuff. And when I arrived, he saw the police too, and it was like, I was on the corner waiting to turn, and I was like, why the police is there? And that's everything happened when we get out of the car. I just knew that the police were there, they had a call, and they didn't have answer when they didn't knock on the door because the door is locked, night shift. So I was like, okay, that's weird, that's my sister that's working that night shift. I'm the one taking the shift change. I tried to call her, no answer. That was a rough morning. Like, they seemed so confused, I didn't know what to do. They broke the window, but they couldn't, because it's a protect window, I don't know, you cannot broke it. So I say, hey, I know how to open the door. So I opened the door, like you have to take the thing, it's magnetic stuff. So I unscrew, I opened the door, and they didn't let me in. The police took me away, and that's when I knew that was something bad happened.
They noticed that behind the cash drawers have been flipped over. There's money on the ground. There are cases of bottles flipped over on the ground. They find that the office window is broken, and in the bathroom, they find the body. With the paramedics, they take the body and bring it to the front of the business to deliver first aid.
I remember getting there and seeing ambulances, a lot of police cars, a lot of police tape surrounding the place, and just starting the investigation like other investigations we had. But what was particular about this one, it was a young girl that was 17 years old that had been found murdered. So it was, I had kids about that age at the time, so it was something that from the beginning was hit home a little bit.
It wasn't even her shift. 17-year-old Brigitte Serre was filling in for a sick co-worker on the overnight shift. She was found stabbed to death in the Shell station this morning.
I remember tape around her wrists and around her ankles. I remember the bare feet and white socks, a lot of blood, and just a little 17-year-old girl who has a part-time job, you know, so it was heavy, it was particular.
It's clear to me that the murder took place. The stab wounds were all inflicted inside the bathroom.
We figured, yeah, it's probably a robbery at the beginning, but we go with the leads we get, and early that morning we got leads that kind of pointed us in a direction, and that's how it started.
Welcome back. 17-year-old Brigitte Serre is found dead inside the gas station where she was working the overnight shift. And as police look for clues, her family is left searching for answers. We now return to Dan Spector and the deadly night shift.
I was driving to work. It was before 6:15 around there. I can't remember exactly the date, the hour. But my daughter, Amélie, called. She says, "Mommy, I think something happened to Brigitte." So I turned around to go there, and like all the way there, I was crying. And I even tried to call 911 to see like if they had any news on it, you know, like if they can give me some information.
At first I was thinking somebody took her. I was not thinking she was still there. I saw the white sheet going on something on the floor, so I knew that it was probably my sister.
Someone from Urgence Santé came up to me and said, "My condolences, madame." Just like that. And I started crying, and my heart started pounding, and I went to hold my daughter, Amélie. My sister came to meet us.
This woman showed up at the crime scene, desperate to find out the name of the victim. When she found out the murdered girl was her niece, she almost collapsed.
I held her too, and then I had to be sat in an ambulance because I was afraid that I was going to have a heart attack. My heart was palpitating and everything.
I remember that morning the two detectives that we had sent to do that had to go to the South Shore to meet with the father that was an employee of a big hardware retail chain, and them coming back and explaining how it had gone down, and it was heavy. It was very heavy, very sad.
The first reaction said, "What did he do, the girl?" It was very tough, you know. When he said something happened, I said, "No, impossible." No, sorry.
And he was by himself. And he's hysterically crying, and he's just hugging me, and all I hear is, "My baby's dead, my baby's dead."
I was in 8th grade in French class, and I got called to the office, so I thought maybe I did something wrong and I was getting in trouble.
Jessica, who was 13 at the time, I had to go into school. I'm in the principal's office, and they bring her to me. I'm trying to explain to her, and she just sat on my lap like she was a 5-year-old and cried.
And it's like I just became a child again in that moment, and it was just like, this can't be real. It has to be a nightmare.
Police discovered that it was around 3 a.m. that 3 men had entered the gas station's convenience store.
It can be a robbery for now, but like I told you, it's very early for now to say if it's a robbery or we don't know the circumstances.
Money and cigarettes had been taken, so had the surveillance tape.
We see that there's blood splatter on the walls and the door of the bathroom. There's none outside, so all the events happened inside the bathroom, and it's in there that Brigitte Serre's body was found.
Brigitte Serre hadn't been working here long, just several weeks. This was the first time she did the night shift.
Employees who work the overnight shift at this gas station are told to never let anyone inside the store. Now, the store's manager told us the 17-year-old was aware of this policy, which raises the possibility that the victim likely knew her killer and probably let him inside.
Without surveillance tape, police began to explore other leads to figure out who was responsible for Brigitte's murder.
We went to meet with the owner of the gas station, who gave us certain leads about certain employees that had recently been fired. So different people give us different information on the morning, and that's where the name of Sébastien Simon pops up early in the morning. I don't even think it's noon. We start on the trail of this Sébastien Simon kid.
Simon quickly became the #1 suspect.
I was working with that guy. I knew him. My sister may do his formation at the workplace, so I was like, okay, why Sébastien Simon is included that? And I know he lost his job because my sister told our boss that he wanted the overcash.
At one point he had approached her and said, well, look, I can sell cigarettes to clients and not punch them in the register, and we can share this money in the morning. And she reported him to the owner who fired him.
Both Emily and Brigitte were telling us about Sébastien Simon, that they didn't trust him, that they found him really weird, and they had, bad feelings about him. And at that point, he had just been fired because of Brigitte.
For me, the connection made that he was mad at her, so he came back for her.
He hadn't come home that night. He hadn't slept at his mother's place, so we dispatched other detectives to go meet with the mother, and that's where we find out that, he supposedly had gone to this bar, and this bar wasn't that far from the gas station. So, as soon as we get leads, we send other detectives to go follow up.
Brigitte Serre was only 17 when she was murdered, but in her short life she made a profound impact on those close to her. Her sister Amélie and stepsisters Melissa and Jessica remember her glowingly.
It's written, I might break up with you, go ce soir.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I was the oldest, so I was always telling her what to do or make her what I want her to do. But I was always also protecting her, like at school and with friends. She was always thinking of the other one and making sure everyone is happy and everyone is okay. And she was taking care of a lot of her closest friends when she was like 17, just before it happened.
We were only 16 months apart, but she was a lot older than me. She knew a lot more about life than me. She was a lot more mature, so she was like my big sister, she taught me how to do laundry, she taught me how to cook an egg, she would take me on the city bus to Montreal to meet her friends, so I felt like I was hanging with the cool kids. She took me under her wing, as a little sister, even though we're not biologically sisters, she was my sister, and she showed me a lot of things in life, so we were really close.
I was probably the annoying little sister that wanted to be like her, that admired her, that if she would tie her hair a certain way, I would do the same. I wanted to be just like her. Everybody wanted to be around her. She was just a great person. She had such a good heart. So it was just something that was, like her aura was just beautiful, and everybody wanted to be with her.
This is Brigitte when she was with me on my birthday. When she was in elementary, she had a little girl friend who had a brain tumor. They were the same age, and Brigitte would go to the hospital with her every time she would go. She was always present. She wanted to go back to school. She wanted to learn mechanics, how to fix cars and stuff. She wanted to be a mechanic. She had dreams. She had a lot of dreams, but they were taken away from her, so.
Welcome back. Now, the police have the name of an ex-employee recently fired from the gas station. We now return to Dan Spector and the deadly night shift.
We get information that Sébastien Simon is being followed by a social worker. The social worker speaks to Sébastien Simon's mother. He had told her that he was going out for some drinks with some friends and that he was going to work after, and she found that strange because she knew that he had lost a job at that particular Shell station. What she found weird was that he had his Shell shirt on.
Joël Nantais was a small-time pot dealer or something like that, and Sébastien Simon owed him money. That's the reason they wanted to commit the robbery. It's the reason why they waited for Brigitte to be there. They say, let's go, Brigitte is there, it's going to be easy.
In the early morning of January 25, 2006, Sébastien Simon and two accomplices met at this bar just across the street from the gas station. At the bar, they play pool. Simon consumes speed, alcohol, and cannabis. When the bar shuts down, they head across the street. Joël Nantais stays in the car. Tommy Gagné approaches the locked door, while Sébastien Simon, wearing a mask, lurks in the shadows.
That night she opened the door because she recognized Tommy. She was a friend. She knew him. She didn't see Sébastien, she just saw Tommy, so Tommy asked her to open the door.
Once the door was open, Sébastien came in masked, and they took Brigitte in the office to tie her up while they did the robbery. This is a young woman who is working the overnight shift alone at 17 years old. Brigitte Serre is 5'1", 100 pounds. She's tiny. You look at the vulnerability of an employee like that at night. We discovered that Sébastien Simon and Tommy Gagné wear Shell uniforms, serve clients, keep the money, and steal cigarettes. Brigitte was able to free herself. She returned to the front of the store from the office where she was tied up. She saw that it was Sébastien and Tommy, and she confronted them. A fight took place, and she was taken to the bathroom. That's where Sébastien Simon stabbed her. In the bathroom. I spent the day at the autopsy noting the wounds. Effectively, we noted 72 stab wounds on Brigitte's body.
A human can do that. You know, animals don't do that to other animals.
You know, like she was tiny. Like, how can you stab this little girl 72 times?
You know, was she dead after 1, after 2, after 3? You know, there's 72. Like, it's pretty horrific.
What hit me is that the vast majority of the wounds were on Brigitte's back and behind her head. There was a single wound on the finger of one hand, which is less common. In a knife attack, the victims have a tendency to defend themselves and will see defensive wounds on the hands, and Brigitte has none. She has many bruises on her face, so she was beaten, probably until she was unconscious, and she had the sole of a shoe imprinted on her face.
In the hours after the crime, the three perpetrators rent a room at this motel south of Montreal.
There, they called some escorts. Escorts who arrived later in the night, probably 4, 5 in the morning. There were 3 escorts, and there were 3 guys. They stayed in the room with the 3 escorts.
During their hotel stay, the driver Joël Nantais, who hadn't set foot in the gas station, sees on TV that the clerk was killed, the first he's heard of the murder.
At that moment, he was frantic. He tells us that he vomited, was crying, all of that. So neither Sébastien Simon nor Tommy told Joël what happened with the girl inside the gas station.
If there was one of the 3 that showed remorse, it was Joël Nantais. He had parked outside. He knew that they were going in, they were going to rob the place, they were going to get money, but it was never a question of hurting this girl from the version that he had given us. It didn't take long for Joël to I believe it was on the Friday, like we're 2 days later, that Joel kind of comes to our office with his father and a lawyer and says, look, I want to cooperate. Eventually the kid tells us the whole story. You know, where they'd been, who they'd met with, that cigarettes had been stolen in big garbage bags, and it was from there that pieces started falling into place.
Meanwhile, Sébastien Simon and Tommy Gagné are both on the lam.
We get a call from the mother saying that she's gotten a call from him, from Sébastien. He's told her that, look, he's going far, she's not going to see him anymore, so we start looking into his cell phone to see what towers he's punching on with calls he's making. He ends up at the Edmonton airport where he goes to the Air Canada counter and tries to buy a ticket to come back to Montreal.
Passengers and staff at Edmonton's International Airport were surprised this morning after police arrested the #1 suspect in the Montreal slaying of 17-year-old Brigitte Serre.
At the Edmonton airport, the RCMP that are in that detachment get a call from the Air Canada counter saying they've got a hit on this person who is of interest to the Montreal police. So the RCMP call us and we explain to them what the situation is. So the RCMP put some officers together and I guess through the closed circuit camera in the airport locate him.
Edmonton Airport surveillance camera footage shows Sébastien Simon being checked by security, then wandering through the concourse. Unbeknownst to him, the security team at the airport is tracking his every move. He finally sits down in an arcade area where the cold-blooded killer casually plays a video game next to a child. A man whisks the boy away before a half-dozen officers with guns drawn swoop in.
The tip was received, he was located coming through security, surveillance was conducted on him until appropriate manpower could be obtained, and then he was arrested.
Sébastien Simon and his accomplice Tommy Gagné were arrested on the same day. Gagné had fled to his father's house in Chicoutimi, Quebec. A Canada-wide warrant for his arrest had been issued.
It's actually a Montreal police officer who has family in Chicoutimi, and she's gotten a call from a brother-in-law or something that somebody close to the family up there that Tommy Gagné is at his father's place. And again, contacts are made with the local police, they surround the house, call, and he comes out, and that's how they arrest him.
The detectives decide to go pick Sébastien Simon up themselves in Edmonton.
Detective Hug and Detective Leclerc, they called me and they said, Mrs. Ryan, we got him, he's in Edmonton. We're gonna go get him. And we're not taking any chances. The two of us are getting on a plane and going to go get him. Like, they were really determined.
He's committed this brutal murder. We can't just let him take a plane.
The first contact we had with Sébastien Simon was when we take him out of his cell. It's a young 19-year-old man. He has no emotion. He's not crying.
One of the first things the detectives notice when picking up Simon from an Edmonton RCMP detachment are his tattoos. Born to kill on one arm, born to die on the other.
It was Detective Leclerc that started speaking to him about his tattoos, and those are nice tattoos, where'd you get those? And it was there that him and Leclerc had a discussion about the tattoos, and he revealed that he had them done in a tattoo parlor on Masson, like in the last couple of days.
They'd later interview the tattoo artist who inked Simon the day after the murder.
He did these tattoos and remembers being paid with $5 bills. And being in charge of the crime scene, I remember there were $400 in fives that had been stolen. So it fit with my crime scene.
Do you even realize what you've done? Do you realize what the significance is of tattooing something like that after what you've done? It was strange.
It blew my mind that he can get tattooed born to kill, born to die after doing it. It's like you have no remorse. You're proud of what you're doing and you want to mark it on your body and remember it like you're proud of it.
How can you be so proud of killing somebody that you get a tattoo for it?
The killer is sitting shackled between the two detectives in the back row of a packed commercial flight.
What I remember about that day is he was always very quiet, but he didn't seem really ashamed of what had happened.
The first thing he wants to know is if he's in the media. The media's talking about him. Are there reporters talking about him? Is his name in the newspaper?
The trio switch planes in Toronto and marching through Pearson to their next gate, a sign of what was to come.
He was kind of acting like, I'm the king, I'm a big shot. I'm being escorted by the police by two big detectives. I'm handcuffed at the wrists and ankles. He didn't walk with his head down. He walked with his head held high.
Now we're on a plane to Montreal. The media coverage has been so extensive that a lot of people kind of are looking around and they kind of know who he is.
About a dozen police officers and airport security were waiting for Sébastien Simon when he got off the plane.
It was like walking through an airport with a famous person, and people are in packs around the airport just watching. Hey, that's him, that's him. And people yelling obscenities at him and stuff. And I remember at one point he flipped a finger to people.
The image was everywhere, including in front of the eyes of Brigitte's family.
I was frustrated. I wanted to kill him anyway first.
There's no words, just anger, rage. It's disgusting.
I felt like taking that finger and putting it somewhere in my gut, you don't know where. He would have swallowed it in the whole freaking hand.
He was really the king. It was a parade for him. It wasn't a guy who had his head down and was crying.
I remember footage, we were in Edmonton actually when we saw footage of the funeral.
It was a big media event. It was unbelievable. We're driving up to the church and getting out of the family car, and all you could hear were cameras going click, 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 click. You know, it was nuts.
It was tough. We had over 1,000 people come in. The funeral itself, the church, was overboard. People were outside. The students from school were all around us, giving their hands.
She was so beaten up. I mean, you could still see the footprint, the mark on her cheek in the casket. Like they couldn't fix everything up for her.
I think it hit all of us that, okay, this actually happened. And then also going to court and hearing the details of everything that happened, that's when you start to realize, okay, this actually happened. And like, this is the reality that we have to go through right now.
Led by security guards and a family member, Sébastien Simon's mother hid from the cameras just after her son's arraignment.
The prosecutor warned us not to stay. He says, we can let you know afterwards. You know, we can buffer it down. All of us, at one time or the other, just walked out of court because we just couldn't deal with it anymore.
But first, he was not guilty. It was not his fault. It's my sister who attacked him, so he was defending himself. That's what first he say in court. That happened because she attacked him. It was like killing her again. You're killing her memory.
By trying to blame her.
Blame her for what happened.
I remember sitting in court when we actually found out how many times she was stabbed. When they said she was stabbed 72 times and 60 times just in the back. And that they couldn't tell us exactly if it was like a punch, a kick, or what exactly killed her. And I remember my stepfather getting up and just storming out of the courtroom.
I was holding myself. I couldn't believe that he had done that much damage on a 5'1", 5'2". Her back, she's tiny. I don't think she had a back left. It's disgusting.
Sébastien had a lot of anger, a lot of rage, and he was angry at Brigitte Serre. Once he entered the service station, we can say he went to commit a robbery, but he entered with a knife to do a robbery, knowing it was a 5'1", 17-year-old girl who was there alone. And it was the girl who had reported him for stealing from the cash. I always felt that when Sébastien got out of the car to go to the gas station, he probably knew that he was going to do more than a robbery that night.
What we also found out is that from when they had the prostitutes there as well,
The detectives had been able to track down the sex workers the three men had called to their motel after the murder, because Joël Nantais told them exactly which motel room the criminals booked.
I think it was the third agency I called where the girl said, yes, that's us, it's our agency. They told us that they had been paid in rolls of coins and $5 bills. And I remember from the crime scene, there were rolls of coins that had been stolen and $5 bills that had been stolen.
After cooperating with investigators, Joël Nantais pled guilty to robbery charges in April 2007.
He's going to be in a home, and that's what she finds is good enough. I don't know. I don't think so.
Annalisa Repelle left the Montreal courthouse angry. She's disgusted with a Quebec judge, saying she was too soft on Joël Nantais. Nantais was given 180 hours of community service, and he'll have to live in a halfway house for the next 18 months. Justice Elizabeth Corte accepted the defense's argument that Nantais was only the getaway driver the night of the murder. There was lots of tension throughout the hearing. The victim's sister Amélie began yelling at the defense lawyer, and inside of court, the victim's father glared at Nantais. Bruno Serre said he had a hard time keeping his composure.
For months, Sébastien Simon and Tommy Gagné maintained their pleas of not guilty. Several court hearings unfolded as part of a preliminary inquiry. The trial was set to begin that September.
It was an emotional roller coaster every day. And again, sometimes you felt like this can't be real. This has to be like a movie or a nightmare. It's impossible that this actually happened.
Tommy Gagné's court case was the first to reach an unexpected conclusion. The family was surprised when he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 10 years. A light sentence in the eyes of Brigitte's loved ones.
I'm sorry, but I think the message is being sent out to the young people that commit crimes, and you're not going to get much for it.
During the preliminary, he was accused of first degree. Right before the actual trial, he pled guilty to second degree to cut a deal to be eligible after 10 years.
Sébastien Simon remained resolute, and his highly anticipated trial was set to begin.
He was quite upset that the things about sleeping with prostitutes, getting the tattoo and everything was going to be admissible in court.
The prosecutor felt that it was important to have them testify on what had happened in that hotel room. It was a challenge for him to go before a judge of the Superior Court and to plead these three motions. And that morning he had pled the three, and we had won all three.
We go for lunch after all of this has just gone down, all of these conversations, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, he pleads guilty.
And we don't know what goes through their heads, what the discussions are with their defense attorneys, but when they came back and told us they were pleading guilty, it was a bit shocking. It's actually rare that people plead guilty to murders.
We were surprised, but at the same time, I think there was a mix of emotions for the family. There was like a relief. You know he's going to admit his guilt, but at the same time, there was no trial. We didn't hear the witnesses. We didn't hear all the evidence.
We hadn't even gotten that closure of him telling us what happened, or him regretting it, or him apologizing it. He just, I pled guilty, end of story, I'm going inside, okay? Like, there's no closure to it.
He pled guilty because he had no other choice. He knew he was caught. He knew he had all the proof that he was guilty, so at that time, he pled guilty.
The gruesome details were read in court Monday after Simon pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of Brigitte Serre.
But I remember being angry because I felt like he was getting off easy. And I felt like we couldn't hear his side of the story, or at least more sides of the story of what actually happened.
With his guilty plea, Simon was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years.
We all broke down and cried and gave the prosecutor hugs, and we're thinking that he's in for 25 years.
That's it.
We thought we had 25 years of peace and quiet.
Welcome back. All three men convicted in relation to the robbery and murder are serving their sentences. Brigitte Serre's loved ones carry on without her, never letting go of her memory, while coping with the trauma caused by her violent death. But soon, they'll confront her killers once again. Here's Dan Spector with a conclusion of the deadly night shift.
The night she died, this is the coat that she was wearing. It's tiny and pretty, but this was her winter coat.
Everyone who was close to Brigitte Serre carries her memory close to their hearts. That's why they feel so compelled to keep fighting in her name.
Tommy Gagné wanted to ask for parole, and I was against it. And I wanted him to do his time. So I said, I'm going to try and make the petition, because I'm saying, okay, if this one's doing it, the other one's going to do it too.
In November 2014, 7 years into his life sentence, Tommy Gagné was found unconscious in his cell at the Macasa Federal Prison north of Montreal after trying to take his own life. He died in a Montreal hospital 4 days later. Gagné was 28 years old.
I got the call at the office. I remember I was in the hallway, and I just picked up the phone, kneeled down, and I said, yes. And I started crying, and I said, yes, yes, yes. Sorry that he passed, but I'm sorry. One less on this planet.
In 2019, 12 years into his life sentence, Sébastien Simon went before the parole board to ask for supervised visits outside the Archambault institution. Brigitte's family was there to face him.
We heard how he was a good person, he was working.
Brigitte Serre's parents listened as their daughter's killer explained he's on the path to rehabilitation.
Don't understand how he was allowed to ask for this so soon.
Simon outlined a life that started with alcoholic, abusive parents. He was involved in gangs, sold drugs, was on speed when he killed Serre.
Everybody has some kind of violence in their family. Doesn't mean you gotta go kill somebody.
The family found out Brigitte's killer had been working full-time in prison, had completed high school and received college credits, but they were most stunned to discover he'd gotten married behind bars to a former correctional officer.
Just to hear that he was married really got to me, and that she has children, so that means she was willing to accept this guy that killed somebody into her house, and she has 2 children.
Bridgette's never gonna get married. Bridgette's never gonna have kids. Like, her life ended at 17. So why does he have to get the right? And he's in jail. Like, why is he allowed to get married?
How could you marry someone like that? You're gonna have children with this man? I'd be afraid, because he could flip anytime.
In the end, the parole board declined Simon's request, saying though he has accomplished a lot, his rehab has only just begun.
As soon as it was done, he started another one, and another one.
At one point, it was every 6 months we were getting notices, well, he's asking again, and he's asking again, and it's like, when is this going to end?
Every time Simon goes before the parole board, the family writes victim impact statements, telling the tribunal how the horrific crime shattered their lives and why they think he should stay inside.
When I have to read my letters, I'm shaking, I'm crying, it's not fun.
Now 34, Simon told the parole board his time behind bars has taught him how to better manage his emotions. He feels ready to begin his gradual reinsertion into society.
He's playing nice music and everybody's dancing on it. But I don't dance in this music. I see the truth in him from the beginning.
In 2021, the family watched closely as Simon went in front of a judge to attempt to have his sentence reduced using the now repealed faint hope clause. Legal scholar Deborah Parks explains that the faint hope clause was implemented after Canada abolished the death penalty in 1976. It was repealed in 2011 by the Harper government, but anyone who committed murder before then is eligible to apply for the judicial review.
After 15 years, there would be an opportunity to take stock and to re-examine and to see whether that person needed to be in prison at least 25 years.
In her decision, Judge France Charbonneau said Simon has indeed come a long way, but cited a 2021 psychiatric evaluation that found he had a 76% risk of reoffending within 5 years, and just how heinous the crime was, and how little remorse Simon showed at the time. Still, he can request early parole again in 5 years.
You got 25, do the 25 before you're allowed out.
I think prison hardens people. I've dealt with a lot of people over the years. It hardens them. You hear, the lawyers get up and plead on how well they're doing and their rehabilitation and all that. That kind of gets to me.
In 2023, after several failed attempts, Sébastien Simon was granted permission to spend time with his wife or other family members outside prison walls 6 times per year, always under the close observation of a correctional officer. He can also leave prison 2 days per week to do community service.
I don't trust the system anymore. I've lost all the trust that I had. It's like we don't count.
It's painful to know that he's allowed to go see his family, I think 6 times a year. We can't see Brigitte anymore.
The family continues to honor Brigitte any way they can on a daily basis. Bruno Serre and Darlene Ryan got heavily involved advocating for victims' rights.
We changed some law and they gave more money to the victim. That's one law we changed.
The detectives who cracked the case have made a point of keeping in contact with Serre's family, even attending some of Simon's hearings just to see them.
I have 3 daughters of my own, so I always identified with Bruno, and I still get a bit choked up when I think of the file and how things were going, and it was just awful,
C'est la seule famille avec qui je suis resté en contact.
This is the only family I've ever stayed in touch with. We probably formed a bond, we share certain values. This family has a lot of respect for the investigative process, for us, the investigators. They always collaborated with us.
Each family member has a shrine to Brigitte in their home.
She was a Winnie the Pooh fanatic.
This is Brigitte's ashes, which Amélie, Bruno, my sister, which is her godmother, and I have.
I try to think of things in the past to rehear the sound of her voice. Just memories that we had of like taking a walk together and just hearing her laugh.
When I miss my sister, I go just to smell her perfume. And I love the bottle. I give my firstborn her middle name, so that's what part of keeping her alive, kind of, for me. Every time I look at my children, I'm thinking how she will be with her, with my kids. Every time we live something happy, we think of her. Every time we live something sad, we think of her.
I would have loved to see her with her sister and her kids.
Brigitte had a family. She had a story. It was like her life wasn't just her death. My nieces and nephews, like, I love them really dearly. And sometimes I try to be even extra because I know Brigitte would have been too, right? Like, they're one aunt less. So at least, like, I try to make up for it, I guess.
What I was missing with Brigitte was hugging her and tell her I love her. It's her presence that I miss the most. Thinking why I wasn't there, why it was my job as a father to protect her. But after that I said, okay, I'm gonna remember the 17 years she gave me. She was with me. That's what keeps me going. She gave me 17 wonderful years.
Sébastien Simon declined our interview request for the story. He was recently transferred to a minimum security prison in British Columbia at his own request. And every January 25th, the day of the murder, the family visits the gas station and lays flowers for Brigitte. They feel every time they advocate against Sébastien Simon's early release, they honor her legacy. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app, visit globaltv.com, or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.